intersection of law and everyday life. We strive to cover it all, help you get your business right. At the corner of legal insight and understanding, we hope to keep your knowledge ever expanding. Welcome to Law Street with GHR. We've got law education accessible to all. Oh, welcome to Law Street with GHR. We're informing the community, so come and get involved.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Law Street at the corner of legal insights and understanding. I'm Gabrielle Grant Gilpin-Hudson, a partner in the law firm Grant Henry & Rooms, and I'm joined today by our associate, Miss Nsuze Stewart. Hi, Nsuze.
Hi, Gabby.
All right, so welcome to another episode of Law Street.
Thank you, I like being here.
Awesome. And today we're discussing sealing the deal,
Right.
understanding the terms of an agreement for sale of real estate in Jamaica. So, first of all, where do we start?
So, when we're coming to understand any real estate transactions, especially where buying or the sale of real estate is concerned, we're gonna always have to talk about the agreement for sale. It's at the core of the real estate transaction.
Because
right?
it's a literal agreement.
It's a literal agreement, so you can't get anything moving before that, right? Off the ground. So where the agreement for sale is concerned, it essentially outlines the terms and conditions under which the sale will be taking place, right? And so you really have to understand the elements of the agreement for sale for you to really understand how you go through the transaction from start to finish. So that's really where we are.
Okay, and if you were to just kind of say, what are the hallmark, what is an agreement for sale, how would you sum that up for us?
So an agreement for sale is essentially a legally binding contract between a seller and a buyer, purchaser vendor type of thing, right, of a particular property. And as I said earlier, it sets out the terms and conditions for that sale and usually has details of the purchaser, the vendor, the cost of the property in question, payment schedules, the responsibilities and the expectations of those parties in through the sale. And so that's really what makes up the agreement for sale.
Okay, so before we circle back to what you can expect to pick off as a part of the agreement for sale, how does the agreement for sale come to be? Like, okay, I am the vendor, you're the purchaser. How do we form this agreement?
Right. So typically, in purchase or sale of property, you'll have the vendor's attorney that will draft the agreement for sale. Now, every agreement for sale is different and is drafted to meet the specific requirements for that particular sale or purchase. And so when the vendor attorney sits down to draft the agreement, they're going to take the sale and what it is that they want it to look like into consideration and then set out those terms to match that.
Okay.
Those would then be shared with, if it is that a purchaser is represented by an attorney, and we do recommend that, then the purchaser's attorney would review that, and then there are usually negotiations / discussions as to then refining and then finalizing the agreement for sale.
Got you. So if I don't have an attorney as a purchaser, I'm getting this draft agreement from the vendor's attorney and having to read through it myself and be like, okay. And
precisely, which is why understanding it is so important, and which is why we also later on discuss the importance of having legal representation when you're purchasing property.
Yeah, but who's going to advocate for you?
Correct. And then, real estate transaction gets so complicated and it's never just cut and dry and A to B. It's always up and down. And so having somebody that understands how an agreement for sale should look like, how to advocate for better terms is always recommended.
Yeah, because there are things that are in favor of the vendor and there are things that are in favor of the purchaser. And then, a good attorney helps you to negotiate what's fair and in the middle.
And to be very honest, every attorney is going to advocate for the best interest of their client.
Exactly.
And so if it is an agreement from the vendor's attorney, then it's going to be drafted.
And you shouldn't rely on that if you don't have an attorney.
Right.
Fair enough. So again, we're seeing the importance of having an attorney in these kind of transactions.
Yes, always.
Okay, so let's go back to the actual agreement. So give me like bullet points, quick, rapid fire.
Right.
What is it?
All right, so right off the bat, core, you're gonna have the details of the parties.
Okay.
So usually in Jamaica, it's the name as it appears whether on a TRN or
the title.
Or the title, and then you have the TRN number. You have their occupation and address.
Okay.
This is to ensure that the person who is saying that They are who they say they are.
I see.
And then same thing for the purchaser as well. So the details there. Then you have property description. You want to outline very clearly, as it appears on the title, that this is a property that's being sold. Usually we have what's called a volume and a folio, and the respective lot number, and any other details as it relates to other subdivisions or anything like that.
Right, because it can get complicated. Like it could be a piece of land,
right,
and you don't have approved subdivision yet,
right,
and all sorts of stuff.
Right. So you want to describe as accurately as you can the property that's in question. Then of course everybody wants to know purchase price. So the agreed price between the vendor and the buyer and what that will look like. And then in keeping with that, you have payment terms. So standard in agreement for sales, you have a deposit. Yes, but then every payment plan and term can look different.
Okay.
You can have payment in installments. You can have more than the agreed or usual deposit up front. 10% is usual, and then you can also negotiate for more upfront, right? If you really want to be eager as a purchaser, you know, or you show earnest, you know, you can.
Yeah, so like I'm going to offer you
more than 10%.
So you should accept my offer.
Right.
Okay.
And so yes, and then also going down in some of the nitty-gritty, which how we get into like protecting. All right, so now you have conditions precedent. So these are specific conditions that the sale is based on. Right, so common, for example, in like mortgage purchases, if it is that the purchaser is being financed by an institution, then they have particular requirements that they have to meet to be able to meet the requirements in the agreement.
Right.
Yes, and then you also have details as relates to closing, and this varies per agreement, but usually you have a general time frame within which you believe the transaction will start and then end, and this can go anywhere as little as 30 days or 120, 180.
Right. So 30 days being on the life side.
On the life side of a cash sale, right.
And then 120 being like a month.
For sure, yes.
All right. And then any other little things that might be there?
Right. So you have, you can make provisions as relates to defaults and any remedies. So we hope, right, in any transaction that anything will be smooth sailing, but that's not always the case. And so you want to be able to protect yourself with a purchaser or vendor. And so you have certain remedies that you can make available in things. So if the purchaser should for some reason not be able to fulfill their obligation under the contract, and you've already invested so much time in the transaction and everything, you're like, then I need some sort of recourse, right? And so the agreement can set out, say, okay, if you fail to do this or if you fail to meet this obligation, then I am entitled to this remedy.
So like if you say it's a cash sale,
right,
and you say you're gonna send me the cash on X date and you don't,
right, you could enforce or put in the agreement, you know, when it is that you pay a penalty fee, which is common. You also have interest, which is common. Interest varies from agreement based on how you agree. And then this is what you do to kind of like create a cushion in the purchaser and the vendor's mind to say, okay, if it is that this should fall through, then there's some sort of security. And
of course, I have the big bad rules of forfeiting your deposits.
Yes, and you know that word is very, very, you know, jarring.
Yeah.
If anybody hears forfeiture in real estate, they're like, whoa, you know, and especially if it's a large sale, and you have basically paid a large amount of money for a deposit, you don't want to. But it's important to note also that those things are important in terms of incentivizing having persons actually their money where their mouth is, right? So it weeds out any sort of like potential unserious people, correct? Yeah. So you have, you know, so you kind of have your you're on the money when it comes on to the purchase and fact that they're serious and
So before I enter into this agreement that might be super time sensitive, that might require me to potentially put my deposit on the line, what do you recommend before that?
Right, so we always recommend due diligence, right? Yeah. So as attorneys, we love that word, due diligence, which means that we're basically going to do all the checks before we get into anything, right? So we want to make sure that the person who's saying that, for example, from the purchaser's standpoint, we want to make sure that the vendor who says that they're selling this property
is actually the vendor.
Actually the owner.
Right.
And then we also want to make sure that it's a good title, right? Yeah. Because you don't want to be buying into property that has issues, encumbrances that may prevent you to eventually exercise your right over that, right? Right. Encroachments and so on. You also want to be able to do checks as it relates to the actual state and the condition of the property. Because a lot of the time, agreement for sale states explicitly that purchase or the property is being sold as is. So you want to make sure that what it is that you want is what you're getting, so you check there. Right, and so you conduct all of these due diligence beforehand to make sure that before you get into this, that you are protected. And of course, we reiterate that this is best done by an attorney.
Girl, for sure.
Yes.
Because, I find that it's not just an attorney either, but an attorney that actually understands this process.
Right,
Because
for sure.
you even have like regular purchases of like land and regular agreements for sale, but then you have super complicated ones
Right.
as well. Has your attorney done a transaction like that
Right.
before? Do they know what to look out for?
Right, and we have very popular now here pre-construction
Yes.
sales, which can be very tricky.
Very tricky because those
Right.
agreements, pre-construction, you want to buy a pre-construction without an attorney, listen,
Yes.
they are harsh on purchasers.
Right,
So
and
you gotta
imagine
be careful.
the house is not even there yet.
Exactly.
And so it's so much, and it's so so much risk. So you always want to have the safety net of having a competent attorney that's well versed in the area and to protect yourself.
I agree, and we're not even being biased, folks. It can get ugly.
It really can.
Yeah. Okay, so we have discussed sealing of the deal.
Yes.
What is in an agreement for sale?
Yes.
Closing thoughts. Wrap it all up for us.
Right. So based on what we've discussed, we understand that the agreement for sale, it lays out all the details that you need to know that's important for the transaction. We know that you can set out, and every agreement for sale looks different and it's flexible. We will also reiterate the importance of having an attorney on both sides, right? And it will also go home about due diligence and making the checks and balance it before, right? So to wrap it all up, you need to understand the agreement for sale, and it's best to have the guidance of a competent attorney when going forward in any real estate transaction.
Girl, thank you. Thank you. So there you have it, another episode of Law Street, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
If you liked this video, visit our website at ghrlegal.com, where you'll find this and other full-length articles on a variety of legal topics. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep up to date with our latest content. This information in this video is for general discussion purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. If you require legal advice, we recommend you book a consultation with one of our experienced attorneys.